She said I wasn't emotionally mature enough. That line, it stuck to my ribs like something half swallowed, half refused. Not shouted. Not even argued. She said it quietly, calmly, like she was telling me the sky was blue or that we needed more milk. It was a Sunday. A warm one, I remember that much. I was at the sink rinsing coffee mugs. Hers still had lipstick on the rim. She stood behind me with her arms crossed like a professor waiting for a student to accept a failing grade. You're just not emotionally mature enough to handle a real relationship, Daniel. That was the moment something inside me went still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't spin around and plead for clarity. I just nodded, and I think that confused her. I dried the mugs, put them away, then walked past her without a word. She thought I didn't care. But the truth is, I cared too much and for too long. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when she'd lean into my chest like it was home. When we'd talk for hours, messy, tangled conversations that went nowhere but somehow made us feel found. But somewhere along the way, she stopped confiding in me. And I stopped asking why. Instead, I filled the silence with chores. Fixed things that weren't broken. Tried to solve problems that hadn't yet been named. I remember once, she sat on the porch crying after work. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. Not the joyful kind. The kind that stings your ears. You always try to fix things, Dan. But sometimes I don't want a solution. I just want someone to sit with me in the mess. I didn't know how to do that. I wish I had. And maybe that's where she was right. Maybe I wasn't mature enough to sit in the discomfort with her. I wanted resolution. Closure. Something to do. She wanted presence. Someone to hold the silence with her. But none of that explains what I overheard. It was a Tuesday night when everything shifted. She didn't know I was home early. I'd had a rough day. Left work after a panic attack in the parking garage. The kind where your chest forgets how to breathe and your hands go cold. I didn't tell her. What would be the point? She'd stopped asking how I was, and I'd stopped expecting her to care. So I came in through the garage quietly, dropped my keys into the bowl by the door, and paused when I heard voices. She was on the patio. I could hear the soft clink of wine glasses and the familiar cadence of her sister's voice, Marissa. They were close, always had been. I figured I'd say hi in a bit. But then I heard my name. He just doesn't get it, she was saying, her voice low but tight. Like, he tries, you know? He does the dishes and buys me flowers when I'm upset, but it's like, he's not really in it. Like he's acting out a role. Marissa murmured something I couldn't catch. She laughed then, a small, sad sound. And the other night, he said he loved me while brushing his teeth. Like it was part of a checklist. I just stood there, wondering how long I've been sleeping next to a stranger. I didn't breathe. Have you told him that? Marissa asked. I've tried, but he always just folds. Like he wants to please me, not connect with me. There's no depth, no fire. She paused, and I imagined her twirling the stem of her wine glass, the way she does when she's thinking. And I've met someone, she said. I think time stopped. I haven't done anything yet, she added quickly, as if that made it better. But he sees me. Like, really sees me. It's like I come alive around him. Like I remember who I used to be before I became someone's wife. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there, one foot inside the hallway, one in the shadows, and felt the world rearrange itself. Not with rage, not even heartbreak, just silence. A kind of vast, echoing stillness that moved through my bones like fog. I think that was the first time I felt nothing. No need to interrupt her. No instinct to confront. No urge to fall apart. Just nothing. And that's when I knew I was free. She hadn't seen me in months. She'd seen a version of me she kept on a shelf. Useful, predictable, emotionally moderate. The man who remembered her latte order but forgot how to make her laugh. The man who handled logistics, not love. She thought I lacked emotional maturity. But maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe I'd been emotionally quiet, not immature. Maybe I'd been managing a kind of grief I didn't know how to name. The slow erosion of us. But in that moment, as I stood in the hallway listening to her rewrite our story with someone else in the wings, I didn't feel the usual storm of shame or regret. Just stillness. I turned, walked upstairs, and lay on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't until an hour later, when she came in smiling and kissed my forehead like nothing had happened, that I realized she really didn't know I was capable of listening. And now, she never would. I think she sensed something had shifted, but she couldn't name it. That night, after she kissed my forehead and crawled into bed, She fell asleep easily, too easily. I lay beside her, eyes wide open, listening to the slow rhythm of her breath, wondering how many nights I'd missed the signs. Not just of another man, but of her turning into someone I didn't know. I didn't touch her, not out of anger, not out of resentment. I just didn't want to cross a distance she'd made permanent. The next morning, I got up before her, made coffee, toasted her bagel the way she liked, cut in half, extra cream cheese on the right side, just butter on the left. I still remembered the details. She came down in a hoodie, eyes puffy. "Thanks," she mumbled, biting into the bagel without looking up. "You're welcome," I said, and sipped my coffee like it was any other morning. I kept the act going for days. I needed time, not to plan revenge or confront her, but to understand what I was actually feeling. It's hard to describe the difference between sadness and release, but they exist on the same road, just different turns. And I had just missed mine so many times I didn't recognize the exit when I finally saw it. One evening, maybe a week later, I told her I had to work late. I didn't. I drove to a quiet part of town I hadn't been to in years and parked by the lake. I sat there with the windows down, the breeze cold on my face, and asked myself the question I hadn't been brave enough to answer until then. What if I've already mourned this marriage? What if the man I was, the version of me that tried and folded and bought flowers and read articles on emotional intimacy just to understand how to be better, what if he was gone? Not because she broke him, but because I finally realized I wasn't broken. I remembered a conversation we had once during our second year together. She had just come back from visiting her father in hospice. She was fragile in that way that made her both sharp and soft. We sat on the floor of our apartment drinking whiskey from mugs, and she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "If I ever turn into someone who stops trying," she said, "promise me you'll walk away. Not out of anger. Out of love." I promised her. I had forgotten that part. But that night at the lake, it came rushing back. She had stopped trying, and I had stayed. Maybe longer than I should have. The next morning, I watched her from the kitchen as she typed on her laptop at the dining table, nodding at a Zoom call, smiling that perfect, performative smile. The one she wore for work. The one she wore for me, too, when she didn't feel like explaining what was really going on. I knew her tells. The foot bounce when she was restless. The way she twisted the ring on her finger when she felt guilty. The fake laugh she used when she was talking to someone she wanted to impress. She did all three that morning. It hit me then. She had been talking about me, not to me, for months. And I had let her. Maybe I had hoped she'd circle back, realize the distance, return with that old softness in her voice. But people don't always come back the way you want them to. Sometimes they return as strangers. Or worse, versions of themselves you no longer recognize, but still feel responsible for. That night, she was on the patio again. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I went to grab a jacket from the hall closet, but I froze when I heard her voice. This time, she was alone. On the phone. With him, I just feel so safe. Like I don't have to explain everything. Like I can breathe again. I don't know who she was talking to. Maybe her sister. Maybe someone else. It didn't matter. I stayed in the hallway, invisible, surrounded by coats and old winter boots, listening to my wife talk about how much lighter her life felt when I wasn't part of it. And again, I felt nothing. No punch to the gut. No heartbreak. Just clarity. She wasn't hiding this because she was cruel. She was hiding it because she didn't want to face the part of herself that was giving up without saying so. But I wasn't mad. I was just done. Later that evening, while she was in the shower, I opened my drawer and pulled out the small journal I hadn't touched in months. I wrote a single sentence on a blank page. She stopped choosing me, so I stopped asking her to. I closed it, placed it back, and started thinking about logistics. Where I'd go, what I'd take, what I'd leave behind. Not as a punishment, just as a quiet retreat from a battlefield I no longer believed in. The odd part, I didn't feel like a victim. Not anymore. I didn't leave all at once. It started with little things. A few shirts packed into my gym bag. A stack of books I boxed under the guise of decluttering. Passwords changed. Bank accounts separated. I moved gently through the shadows of our life, not out of secrecy, but out of reverence for what we had been, not what we'd become. You don't slam the door on a story that was once beautiful. You close it softly, with care. That's what I was doing. The moment of departure came quietly. She was at work, some late meeting she hadn't mentioned. I had the house to myself. I walked through it slowly, room by room. I touched the worn throw pillow on the couch we bought at that little antique market. The coffee mug she used every morning. The fridge magnet from our first trip to Oregon. I wasn't trying to romanticize the past. I just wanted to leave with the right goodbye. There were no tears. No speeches. I left a note. 3 lines, folded neatly on her nightstand. You were right. I wasn't emotionally mature enough. But I've learned when to let go. That was all. I turned off the lights. Locked the door. Walked to my car with a single suitcase and a heart that no longer begged for answers. She called once. I didn't answer. Then again. I let it ring. The 3rd time, she left a voicemail. Dan, I don't understand. Where are you? Can we just talk? I didn't mean for things to get this far. But they already had. I listened to her voice the way you listen to a song you used to love. Familiar, melodic, but no longer meant for you. In the days that followed, friends reached out. Mutual ones. Some confused. Some sympathetic. I didn't offer explanations. I wasn't interested in shaping the narrative. I wasn't angry. I was tired. And tired men don't fight wars they've already lost. They choose peace. Even if it means walking alone. One afternoon, maybe 2 weeks later, I ran into Marissa, her sister, at a bookstore downtown. She looked surprised. Then guilty. She hugged me before I could say anything. I didn't know you heard, she whispered. That night on the patio? I nodded. She didn't mean to hurt you, she added. She was just lost. I know, I said. So was I. We stood in silence for a moment, both of us realizing how much damage can happen in quiet places. I never asked if she'd told my wife. I overheard the conversation. It didn't matter. That moment was mine. My turning point. My clean break. Months passed. I moved into a small apartment near the lake. It wasn't much, 2nd floor, creaky floors, cheap blinds. But it was mine. I started cooking again. Long walks. Books with no bookmarks because I finally had time to finish them in one sitting. People asked if I'd date again. Eventually, probably. But I wasn't in a rush. For the first time in years, I felt full. Not with love, not yet, but with quiet. And quiet, I learned, is a kind of healing. Sometimes, I still think of her. Not with bitterness, but with a strange kind of gratitude. She taught me something I was too slow to learn on my own. That love without presence becomes performance. And that leaving doesn't always look like slamming doors or screaming matches. Sometimes, it's a quiet walk down the hallway, a journal closed, a final breakfast shared in silence. She said I wasn't emotionally mature enough. But emotional maturity isn't loud. It's not knowing the right thing to say. It's knowing when saying nothing is finally the answer. That night on the patio, when she poured her heart out to her sister, not knowing I was listening, that was the last thread holding me to a version of myself that kept trying to fix what wasn't asking to be saved. And when I didn't interrupt her, didn't cry, didn't beg, that was the first time I felt nothing. And that's when I knew I was free.